He was the most powerful man on earth, and he married his sister. One forbidden child ended an empire.
What if the most powerful empire in the ancient world collapsed, not because of invasion, famine, or plague, but because of one forbidden love affair? What if the pharaoh's greatest enemy wasn't a foreign king, but his own wife? This is the story of the child who should never have existed, and the empire that fell because she did. Her name was lost to history. Her face was erased from monuments. Her very existence was denied for 3,000 years. But in 2008, archaeologists in the Valley of the Kings found something that rewrote everything we thought we knew about ancient Egypt's most powerful dynasty. Inside a sealed chamber, buried beneath layers of deliberate destruction, they discovered papyrus scrolls that told the truth. The pharaoh had married his sister. She was pregnant with his child, and when the wrong people found out, it triggered a collapse that would end an entire lineage of kings. This is not myth. This is not legend. This is documented history that was deliberately hidden for centuries. If you want to explore the secrets that empires tried to bury, subscribe now, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you've been told about ancient Egypt. Valley of the Kings. Dr. Amara Hassan, an Egyptian archaeologist, was leading a routine excavation near the tomb of Amenhotep III when her team discovered something unexpected. A sealed chamber, not on the official maps, not recorded in any historical documents, hidden deliberately behind a false wall that had remained undisturbed for millennia. When they opened it, they found papyrus scrolls wrapped in linen. The moment Dr. Hassan began reading the hieroglyphics, she realized the magnitude of what she held. These weren't religious texts or administrative records. These were confessions, coded, careful, but unmistakable confessions. One scroll, dated approximately 1350 BCE, was written in the handwriting of the high priest Amenhotep. It read, "I write this in secret, knowing it may never be read. I am bound by oath to protect the pharaoh's secrets, but history must know the truth, even if not today. What I will write is the reason the 18th dynasty fell. It is the reason the throne passed to a different bloodline. It is the reason Egypt nearly destroyed itself from within." The scroll continued, "The pharaoh married his own sister, not in ceremony that was public, in secret, in darkness, and she bore him a child. When the truth emerged, it fractured everything: the court, the priesthood, the military. It created two factions within Egypt itself. One faction loyal to the pharaoh, one faction loyal to the old laws that forbid such unions. And between these two factions, an empire began to tear itself apart. Dr. Hassan's hands were shaking as she read. She photographed every scroll, she documented every word, and she realized that she had discovered the hidden history of Egypt's greatest crisis, a crisis that had been erased from official records, rewritten by victors, buried beneath thousands of years of carefully constructed mythology. The papyrus scrolls were authentic. Carbon dating confirmed they were from the 18th dynasty, and their message was unambiguous. The collapse of Egypt's greatest dynasty wasn't caused by external forces. It was caused by internal betrayal. It was caused by one man's obsession with a forbidden woman, and it was caused by the empire's inability to handle the truth. Amenhotep III was not an ordinary pharaoh. He was the embodiment of power, wealth, and control. Historical records describe a man obsessed with perfection, the perfect temples, the perfect monuments, the perfect image of divine kingship. He ruled during Egypt's golden age. The treasury was overflowing, the military was undefeated, the priesthood was obedient, and Amenhotep III was determined to create a legacy that would echo through eternity. But according to the sealed papyrus scrolls, the pharaoh had developed an obsession that went beyond political ambition. He had become fixated on the concept of purity, not just in terms of bloodline, but in terms of divine connection. He believed that the royal family family's divine essence could only be maintained through the most intimate union between siblings. In Egyptian mythology, the gods Osiris and Isis had been siblings who married and produced a divine child. Amenhotep III believed that by recreating this divine union in human form, he could produce a child of extraordinary spiritual power, a child who would be more than human, more than Pharaoh, something approaching divinity itself. This obsession was not entirely unique to Amenhotep III. Sibling marriages among royalty had occurred before in Egyptian history, particularly among the Ptolemaic dynasty, but they were rare, controversial, and typically shrouded in secrecy. What made Amenhotep III different was the deliberateness of his action. He wasn't marrying his sister out of necessity or political convenience. He was doing it as an act of religious conviction. His sister was named Kiya. She was beautiful, educated, and politically astute. She had been raised to be the ideal royal woman, trained in governance, fluent in multiple languages, and skilled in the diplomatic arts that kept Egypt's vast territories united. But she was also trapped. As the pharaoh's sister, she had no choice but to obey him. When Amenhotep III decided that she would become his wife, not just his sister, but his spouse in every sense, Kiya had no power to refuse. The marriage was kept secret. No public ceremonies, no official announcements. Instead, Amenhotep III created a narrative. He claimed that Kiya had been given a special religious role. She was to be a divine consort, a spiritual companion to the pharaoh in his religious duties. This explanation was accepted because no one dared question the pharaoh's reasoning. But there was another reason for the secrecy: Queen Tiye. Queen Tiye was not Amenhotep III's sister. She was his first wife, chosen through political alliance, and she had given him legitimate heirs. She was powerful, politically connected, and deeply respected throughout Egypt. More importantly, she was not a woman who would accept betrayal silently. According to the papyrus scrolls, Tiye began to suspect the truth within months of Kiya's arrival at court. The signs were obvious to someone as politically astute as the queen: the pharaoh's frequent private meetings with his sister, the special quarters prepared for Kiya, the way the pharaoh looked at her. Tiye waited and watched. She gathered information through her network of servants and allies, and when she had enough evidence, she confronted Amenhotep III directly. The scrolls describe the confrontation only in vague terms. The priest who wrote them was careful not to record anything that could be traced back as evidence, but the implications are clear. Tiye demanded that the relationship end. She threatened to expose the truth to the priesthood and the Senate. She warned that if the pharaoh continued, she would use every political connection she possessed to force his abdication. Amenhotep III's response was to deny everything. He claimed that Tiye was jealous, paranoid, and irrational. He used his authority as pharaoh to silence her. He isolated her politically, removing her allies from positions of influence and surrounding her with his loyalists. But Tiye was not a woman who could be easily silenced. She began making her own moves. She reached out to the high priests, who had their own concerns about the pharaoh's unconventional union with his sister. She allied herself with military generals who feared that the pharaoh's increasingly erratic behavior was weakening Egypt's position. Most importantly, she began spreading rumors. The papyrus scrolls reveal that Tiye engaged in what modern strategists would call a disinformation campaign. She couldn't openly accuse the pharaoh. That would be treason and would result in her execution. Instead, whispering, she whispered. She suggested, hinting, she hinted. Through carefully placed intermediaries, stories began circulating through the priesthood and the Senate. The pharaoh's behavior was becoming erratic. He was spending all his time with his sister. He had stopped attending to his duties as ruler. There were whispers that Kiya was pregnant, though how could that be? if she was truly just a divine consort. The stories spread. They grew in the retelling. By the time they had circulated through the various factions of the priesthood and military, the narrative had become: the pharaoh had betrayed the sacred laws of Egypt. He had committed incest. He had produced a bastard child of unknown spiritual status, and he was so obsessed with his sister that he had effectively abandoned his duties as pharaoh. Whether all of this was true or exaggerated didn't matter. What mattered was that doubt had been planted, and doubt, once planted in the minds of powerful people, grows into something much more dangerous. The high priests began questioning Amenhotep III's divine right to rule. The military generals began questioning whether they should follow a pharaoh who had violated fundamental Egyptian law. The Senate began questioning whether the succession was still legitimate, and Amenhotep III, increasingly isolated, made a series of decisions that would prove catastrophic. According to the papyrus scrolls, Kiya became pregnant within a year of her secret marriage to Amenhotep III. The pregnancy had to be hidden. If the birth of the child became public knowledge, it would confirm all the rumors, all the whispers, all the accusations that tea had been circulating. So, Amenhotep III did something extraordinary. He built a secret compound within the palace, a place where Kiya could give birth in complete secrecy, a place where the child could be hidden from everyone, except the pharaoh's most trusted inner circle. The child was born on a night when Amenhotep III had ordered all official activities suspended. No witnesses were allowed. Only the pharaoh, 3 specially selected physicians, and the high priest Amenhotep were present. The scroll describing the birth is clinical and brief. The child was born healthy. It was female. The pharaoh named her Nefertari, and he ordered that her existence be erased from all records. For 3 years the child lived in the hidden compound. She was cared for by a small group of loyal servants. She was never seen in public. She was never mentioned in any official document. As far as Egypt's government was concerned, she did not exist, but her existence was known, and that knowledge was becoming a weapon. As the years passed, the tension at court became unbearable. Tea had succeeded in creating a chasm within Egypt's power structure. The priesthood was split between those who remained loyal to Amenhotep III and those who believed he had violated sacred law. The military was split between those who served the pharaoh and those who served the broader interest of Egypt's stability. Most critically, the Senate was split. Ancient Egypt's Senate, though not as powerful as in later periods, still exercised significant influence over matters of law and succession. And now that body was deeply fractured over the question, what was the status of the hidden child? If the child was accepted as legitimate, then Amenhotep III's actions were validated, and the incestuous union was permitted. But this would set a precedent that violated centuries of Egyptian tradition and law. If the child was rejected as illegitimate, then she was a bastard, with no right to the throne. But her very existence was proof that the pharaoh had violated sacred law. There was no solution that would satisfy everyone, and as the child grew older, she became an increasingly destabilizing presence at court. The papyrus scrolls describe meetings of the high priests, where the question was debated: should they demand that Amenhotep III publicly acknowledge the child? Should they demand that she be removed from Egypt? Should they demand that the pharaoh submit to ritual purification for his violation of sacred law? Each faction had its own answer, and each faction was willing to fight for its answer. By year 5 of the hidden child's life, the secret was beginning to unravel. Too many people knew, too many servants had been involved, too many officials had been required to maintain the conspiracy of silence. Rumors began to emerge from the palace, not whispers this time, but concrete accusations. The pharaoh had an illegitimate daughter. She was hidden somewhere in the palace. She was the product of his union with his sister. Tea, hearing the rumors, made a critical decision. She went to the high priest. She brought documentation. She brought witnesses, and she demanded that they investigate. The high priests were faced with a dilemma. If they investigated, They were acknowledging that the rumors might be true. If they found evidence of incest and a hidden child, they would have to take action. Action that could destabilize the entire government. But if they didn't investigate, they would be complicit in covering up a violation of sacred law. They chose investigation. What followed was unprecedented in Egyptian history. An official inquiry into the pharaoh's personal conduct. The high priests demanded access to the hidden compound. They demanded to see the child. They demanded explanations. Amenhotep III's response was defiant. He refused to grant access to the child. He claimed that the inquiry was a violation of his authority as pharaoh. He threatened to remove any priest who continued to pursue the matter. But his defiance only confirmed the rumors. If the child didn't exist, why wouldn't he simply produce her and prove the accusations false? The crisis came to a head when Amenhotep III, in an act of political desperation, made a decision. He would present the child to the Senate himself. He would defend his actions. He would argue that the union with his sister was justified on religious and dynastic grounds. The child, now 6 years old, was brought before the full Senate in an unprecedented public session. The papyrus scrolls describe the scene. The senators shocked to see the young girl, her appearance revealing the obvious truth of her parentage. She looked like Amenhotep III. She also looked like Kiya. The pharaoh stood before the Senate and made his case. He argued that the union with his sister was sanctioned by ancient tradition. He argued that the child was not illegitimate, but divine, a product of the sacred union between siblings that had created the gods themselves. He argued that to reject the child was to reject the very foundations of Egyptian spiritual belief. For a moment there was silence. Some senators seemed moved by the pharaoh's argument. Others seemed uncertain. But then Queen Tiye stood, and she spoke. The papyrus scrolls don't preserve her exact words, but they describe the moment. The queen publicly denounced her husband. She accused him of violating sacred law. She demanded that the Senate strip him of his authority and place her legitimate son on the throne. The Senate erupted into chaos. What followed was civil discord, not quite civil war. Egypt never fully collapsed into open conflict, but the empire fractured severely. Amenhotep III attempted to maintain his authority, but his power was crumbling. The priesthood was split. The military was divided in its loyalties. The Senate was openly hostile. More critically, news of the crisis spread beyond the palace. Soldiers began questioning their commanders. Citizens began questioning the legitimacy of their pharaoh. Egypt's neighbors, always waiting for signs of weakness, began making aggressive moves on Egypt's borders. The papyrus scrolls describe this period only in fragments. The author was clearly writing in hiding, aware that his words could be discovered and punished. But the fragments suggest a period of extraordinary instability. Purges, counter-purges, alliances forming and dissolving. The hidden child, caught in the center of this crisis, was the focal point of all the conflict. Some senators wanted her officially recognized as legitimate. Others wanted her executed. Still others wanted her exiled. Amenhotep III was caught between defending his actions and preserving Egypt's stability. Every day his position grew weaker. The empire did not collapse suddenly. It unraveled gradually. Amenhotep III's reign, which had begun with such promise and power, ended in isolation and frustration. Within 7 years of the public revelation of the hidden child, Amenhotep III was effectively removed from power. The papyrus scrolls describe his final appearance in official records with a single sentence. The pharaoh withdrew from public life. He ceased attending to matters of state. He relinquished authority to his son. Amenhotep III died a year later. The cause was listed as illness, but the papyrus scrolls suggest that he simply gave up. His obsession with his sister had cost him everything: his authority, his legacy, his power. Queen Tiye's son took the throne. The new pharaoh's first act was to officially deny the legitimacy of the hidden child. Second, he ordered all records of his father's relationship with Kiya to be destroyed. Third, he began a systematic erasure of his father from Egyptian history. The monuments bearing Amenhotep III's name were defaced. His temple carvings were chiseled away. His legacy was deliberately rewritten, and the hidden child, the daughter of incest, the symbol of forbidden love, simply disappeared from history. What happened to her, the papyrus scrolls don't say. The final mention of her is brief and cryptic. The child was removed from Egypt. Whether she survived or died, no record was kept. The papyrus scrolls end with a single paragraph, written in the shaking handwriting of an old man. I have documented this truth because history must know what happened. Not today, perhaps not for 1,000 years, but someday someone will find these words, and they will understand. Empires do not fall because of invasion or famine. Sometimes they fall because of the choices of one man. Sometimes they fall because love or obsession is mistaken for divinity. And sometimes they fall because the truth, once revealed, cannot be unspoken. When Dr. Amara Hassan finished reading the scrolls, she understood why they had been hidden. They told a story that contradicted everything Egypt's official history had claimed about Amenhotep III. They revealed that one of Egypt's greatest dynasties had collapsed not from external pressure, but from internal corruption. Corruption rooted in the pharaoh's obsession with creating a divine child. The scrolls were preserved, they were studied, and they were published. Today, they form the basis of our understanding of the 18th dynasty's decline. But they remained hidden for 3,300 years, carefully concealed by Amenhotep III's successors, deliberately erased from official records, kept secret by a priesthood that understood that some truths are too dangerous to be known. The hidden marriage remained hidden until technology allowed us to read the words that one brave priest had written, knowing that discovery might never come in his lifetime. But it came, and now the forbidden child, the daughter of incest, has been acknowledged. Her father's obsession has been documented, and the empire that fell because of one forbidden love affair has been understood. The question that remains unanswered: what would have happened if the secret had been kept? If Kiya had never discovered the truth? If the hidden child had remained hidden forever? Egypt might still be standing. The 18th dynasty might have continued. History itself might have been different. But secrets, once created, have a way of destroying everything they touch.